Hello and welcome to the Fast Draw Live here on CBSNews.com. I'm Cali Carlin, and we are joined by the Fast Draw stars and creators Mitch Butler and Josh Landis. The topic we're tackling today is hot gas. I'm sure you're well aware that gas prices rise in the summer, but did you know it's even higher than what the pump says? That's because the quality is weaker. Here's the Fast Draw explanation.
There's a hidden cost to the price of gasoline, and it has nothing to do with the price of crude.
It has to do with the weather. When it warms up, gasoline gets weaker.
Here's how it happens. Gasoline, like a lot of things, expands when it gets hot.
Like the air in this hot air balloon.
And the mercury in this thermometer.
When gas heats up, it also takes up more room.
Here's a gallon of gas in the winter. The molecules of energy are close together.
Here's a gallon of gas in the summer. The molecules have spread farther apart, which means fewer of them fit into a gallon.
And that means this fuel has less power.
People in the industry have known this for years. When they buy fuel from each other, they make sure it's a cool 60 degrees.
If it's warmer, they pay less per gallon.
But you pay the same, no matter how hot the gas gets.
But there is a movement to change that. Lawsuits have been filed on behalf of consumers in more than 24 states, and a bill has been introduced in Congress that would require temperature compensation at the pump.
A consumer group called Public Citizen, using government data on gas station temperature readings, says the annual impact on drivers is significant.
The industry makes money. They make up to about $3 billion a year. Is the ripoff of the American consumer from their purchase of gasoline.
For a solution, just look north to Canada, where their pumps adjust for the temperature.
Let's say it's summertime and the gasoline is at 85 degrees. A driver fills up his 20-gallon tank with a smart pump and he pays $80. If he'd used an American-style pump, he'd have to pay almost $1.50 more.
The people who sell gas here in the U.S. don't dispute the physics of hot and cold fuel, but they say more research is needed to know whether changing the pumps here would save consumers money in the end. It would cost the industry $2 to $3 billion.
A cost that would be passed on to drivers once.
Or if the calculations are correct, we can go on paying billions, year after year after year.
Meanwhile, this summer, people will be sweating it out.
Filling up with gas that's weaker.
They call this a hot fuel premium. And what happens is that gasoline, if you have a gallon of gasoline at 60 degrees, that's the industry standard. If you warm it up, the gasoline expands, so it takes up a little more than a gallon, right? So if you're at a gas station and you pump a gallon of gas and it's warmer than 60 degrees, you've missed what's expanded along the top. So you're essentially getting a little bit less gasoline than it was at the industry.
Percentage-wise, about how much less gas are you getting?
Well, for every 15 degrees, you're losing 1% of volume. So for places like, for example, I grew up in Alaska, and the temperature can vary 100 degrees from summer to winter. So it's a considerable amount.
Yeah, and one way you can think about it too is, I mean, a good example is, I don't know if people know, but in airlines, they gauge their fuel in pounds. They say we need 1,000 pounds. You may have heard this. Mm-hmm. The reason that they do that is that when they're on the ground, say it's 60 degrees, and they have 1,000 pounds of gasoline, it's going to be, say, 1,000 gallons. That's not accurate, but let's just say for the sake of argument, 1,000 gallons. They fly up to an altitude, and they're at 0 degrees or minus 30, which is often what you have flying at high altitudes. That gasoline will shrink, and now it'll still be 1,000 pounds, but it might only be 700 gallons. So they'll look at that 700 gallons and they'll say, oh my God, we only have 700 gallons, we can't make it. But that is if they measured in gallons. But because they measure in pounds, they'll look at the weight and they'll say, it's still 1,000 pounds, I don't care how big it is, it's got enough energy in it to get me to my destination.
So what happens to all of us in the summer is we're already paying a little bit more because prices go up with supply and demand, but then because it's hot, the molecules expand, and you're saying we're really getting less gas than we're bargaining for.
Exactly. In the animation, we have the mercury rising in the thermometer.
The hot air balloon going up.
The same thing happens with your gas. It expands when it gets hot, and so less of it is going to fit inside of that gallon.
So you're getting hit kind of twice, because you're paying more and you're getting less in the summer.
More. And on a per gallon basis, it's tiny, but when you multiply it across the country onto all the gas that Americans consume, it's between $2 and $3 billion a year, in addition to what you should be charged. And to put it in another perspective, it's attracting a lot of attention, especially during a recession. Right now, there are a number of lawsuits that are trying to force gas distributors to put on what they call temperature conversion pumps. What these pumps do is, based on the temperature, they measure the gas differently. So if it's a hot temperature, you'll essentially get more gas for the same price. If it's a cold temperature, you'll get less gas. And there's actually big news on this right now. Costco, which is the one of the biggest distributors of retail like discount gasoline,
right.
has announced it will put these devices on its properties in about a dozen states. They're going to install these temperature conversion pumps. It says it wants to, but there's a big question as to whether it's really going to be allowed to, because the oil industry is going to make every move it can to stop this.
They don't like this idea.
They don't like this idea because once you open that door, it's going to be like a dominoes. You know, once Costco does it, then Walmart's going to do it, and then Conoco or whoever, and then once it's kind of a ripple effect. And their big opposition to it is really the cost.
Yeah, but if you look at airlines and if you look at the military, they measure in pounds. So it's kind of telling that they think it's important enough to measure it that way.
It's just us consumers being left out.
Yeah, it's consumers, and consumers don't know about it because it's kind of just built into the cost, and it's tiny. It's kind of like those little surcharges on your phone bill. You know, like, what's that? 18 cents. I don't know, whatever, I'll pay it. And it's that kind of a thing where.
Right. Or your 401k, where you have no idea these charges are even being tacked on.
Yeah, it's the same thing. And the other thing about it is that there aren't a lot of people who want to change this. The gas station owners, ironically, don't have a lot of interest in changing this because they don't make much of their money off of gas anyway. So for them, it doesn't really register on their radar.
And they would have to pay the cost of the new hardware.
They'd have to pay the cost. So there's actually a bill in Congress now that was introduced last year that would require all gas stations to put these conversion pumps on their facilities, and it would also set up a fund, and just to fix exactly what you're talking about, where this fund would pay gas station owners costs of retrofitting their pumps, because that's going to cost billions of dollars.
Right. So you say that the same principle that applies to fueling your car applies to fueling your body with food. Tell us about the principle of the cost of food and calories.
We always have a lot of research left over when we put together these animations that explain things. And one thing that interested us was another kind of fuel, which is calories. And what is the cost of calories, and how does the cost of calories vary between different types of food? There's a University of Washington study that looked at 370 foods, and they wanted to know how much does 1,000 calories cost. So if you look at cheap, like munchy food with this very dense in energy, you're going to be paying $1.76 for 1,000 calories. But once you turn over to the healthier foods, salads and things like this that have less calories and are more premium products, you're suddenly paying $18.16 for 1,000 calories.
So
it's more than 15 times difference.
Less than $2 for 1,000 calories, and healthy food is almost $20 for 1,000 calories.
Right, just over $18.
Yeah,
so it's substantial.
Right,
so you can see, and keep in mind, the average person, the average woman should eat about 1,800 calories. The average man, maybe 2,000, a little more. But this is one of the reasons why during a recession, fast food companies do so well. And in this recession, McDonald's has been doing really well. They've been up while a lot of other things. I mean, Burger King is down a little bit, but the ones that have been hit the hardest are the high-end kind of gourmet kind of chains. But to be able to eat for $1 a day is appealing for a lot of people.
Yeah, not only is it tastier and easier to get, but substantially cheaper.
Wow, I didn't realize there was such a huge disparity gap, so to speak, between junk food and healthy food.
Yeah.
So I think that should be the next Fast Draw.
Yes, we're working on it. Are
you illustrating that one?
It's in the works.
Yeah. Well, our food pyramid piece we have halfway done. It's a similar concept. Actually works on the topic of the farm bill, which they call the farm bill, which should be a food bill. A lot of people say, but basically, if you look at where the subsidies go.
Yeah. If you look at the food pyramid, what the government tells us we should be eating, and then you compare that to what the government is actually funding and subsidizing, that pyramid is not pyramid shaped. It's very cattywampus because.
Interesting.
It's so bizarre.
What do you think is causing that?
Agricultural interests. Corn and rice lobbyists get all the money, and so. We're supposed to eat less sugar, but corn sugar is, what the absolute cheapest calories out there is a Coke, which is high fructose corn syrup. If you want to eat broccoli, you're going to pay, an arm and a leg.
Wow. So let's talk about you all, the Fast Draw team. How did you come together, and how was this idea born? I know it's called Schoolhouse meets Freakonomics.
Yeah, there was something called Schoolhouse Rock back in the day that a lot of people remember.
I remember Schoolhouse Rocks.
Yeah. So a lot of people look at our stuff and think of that, and that's fine. I love that stuff. And then there's this Freakonomics stuff that finds interesting ways of looking at a topic and measuring things in different ways. And people have used those two terms to describe us.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Are you
It's
okay
a pretty
with
good
that?
comparison.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, definitely. They're both much more famous and much more successful than we are. So we'll take any kind of comparison.
Someday they'll be saying that those guys
Yeah.
are the new Fast Draw.
Right. Fast Draw meets Conan the Barbarian, whatever that's going to be. No, we just try to find a different way of looking at things that we're already talking about. So like this is why we did the hot gas piece, because gasoline prices are always in the news. We're always watching and charting, and everyone's, did you hear it went up 25 cents or whatever, and we're crazed about it. But a lot of people don't realize that this thing is going on in the background the whole time, and it's billions of dollars. So that's one thing that we thought was an
Well,
interesting
then
way.
how do you find your subjects and topics?
Anywhere and everywhere. And if anybody has any suggestions out there,
Sure, yes,
definitely let
please.
us know. A lot of people.
Twitter?
Yeah,
Fast Draw?
we've had suggestions from as far away as New Zealand for pieces. So definitely contributions help. People. It's kind of like why does this happen, or did you know kind of thing.
And then from the creation part, you guys do everything: illustration, editing.
Yeah, we do.
voiceover.
Yeah, we do. Josh, I think, is one of the best news guys in the business. It's a pleasure to work with him. He's got a great head for news, and my background is explaining things visually. So I draw a lot of pictures to explain things. So we sit down, with a laptop and a dry erase board, and we kind of hash these things out and figure out what's the best way to explain some relevant news topic.
Yeah, it's a kind of it's a multi-part process. I do a lot of the research and writing, and then sit down with Mitch, and we, refine the script, he makes it more interesting, more entertaining, and then we figure out ways to put the visuals, put the visuals. A couple black eyes, get each other, a couple fist fights later, we get a script we agree on, and then bring it to life in the studio.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.